when we think about the ulama, you're looking for hope. You're looking for really somebody to come to the ummah and say, listen, Allah Azza wa Jal will not only take care of us, but inshallah will use us to bring back this deen. You're looking for ulama to give you that hope, to speak like that, to suffer if you have to, for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. And hence, when they came to Imam Malik and they would tell Imam Malik, what do you have to say about what you went through? He would say, a man that has not been harmed for the sake of Allah, there is no good in him. This is something that we have to really look into in our own lives. What are we willing to give for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla?
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So again, we are continuing with Imam Malik rahimahullah. As we said when we started the sessions from last month, we were talking about Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and the life and standings and the steadfastness of Imam Abu Hanifa. This seems to be the nature of the time. I mean, the 100 years that you're talking about, those 100 years, it produced some of the most amazing men, I think, that history will continuously look up to. There's no doubt in my mind. When you look at the generation of course, the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, and then after that, the Tabi'een, and then you have the Tabi'een. And then, of course, you have, after them, starts the generation of these ulama, starting with Imam Malik, or starting with Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik. It seems that Abu Hanifa was older than Imam Malik. One of the things is that because Abu Hanifa, when Hajjaj was in Iraq, he was 15 years old. And Imam Malik, when Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi, although he was not a Khalifa, he was a governor of Kufa, he was sent to Iraq. He was ruling Iraq. At that time, he was 2 years old. So you can see the difference between the ages. That Imam Malik was younger. Of course, he was born, as the Shaykh also mentioned, he was born in the Khilafah of Al-Wali or Malik ibn Abdul Malik's time. He was 6 years old, and I'm going to give some of the outlines very quickly because I want to get to the mehna, the kind of what he had to go through, but so that you kind of get an outline of the type of timing that Imam Malik is living under. When Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was the Khalifa, Imam Malik was 6 years old. So remember I said Hajjaj, he's 2, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he's 6. Now we're talking about Banu Umayyah times. So the downturn of Banu Umayyah began from Yazid ibn Abdul Malik. Then it became Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, and then it just went down from there. Imam Malik also witnessed, because my work is to cover the political life of Imam Malik, so I will focus on that, inshallah Rabbul Alameen. He witnessed the revolt of Zayd ibn Ali. Also, this took place against Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, who was a Khalifa at the time. And of course, the Khawarij were also there. You're looking at 129 Hijri, so Khawarij also had the big revolt at that time. Remember, Khawarij also had a revolt during the time of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, but he took care of them in a different way. He kind of actually talked them through it, and then he resolved the issue. But then, at the time of Imam Malik, Khawarij came out again, and they were doing the fitna that they have always done. And when they had asked Imam Malik regarding them, he said, leave them. The one zalim will take care of the another. And it kind of happened because he was talking about Banu Umayyah, and he said, and Banu Umayyah they came in and they took care of Khawarij. They were completely crushed. So these are just kind of different events that he went through in his life. Well, a lot of his knowledge, he is from the line in a sense, from the knowledge perspective, he's from the line of Abdullah ibn Umar. And if you know Abdullah ibn Umar tried very
in a very tough way to trying to maintain some type of stability all throughout his life. He was trying not to take any sides. He was trying not to, put one over the other, things like this. So Imam Malik tried for the longest time in his life to try to maintain some type of neutrality. Whenever they would come and ask him regarding especially because of the Bani Umayyah issue, he would say, if the Khalifa is like Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, then let it be. Now, of course, as Sheikh Qasim before me mentioned what he went through, I will go through that and exactly why he went through it, inshallah Rabbul Alameen. Now, the Abbasid rule begins 132 Hijrah, all right? So he is witnessing it, and at that time he's 39 years old. So obviously, middle-aged man. Now he's been through different issues that's happening around him. Now, one of the reasons also they mentioned that he was he stayed as they mentioned that he stayed, or he tried to stay between Mecca and Medina, and he would go to Hajj and Umrah, things like this, or he would, So he kind of stayed away from the fitna that was happening, or the different revolts that were taking place in Kufa. Not much of this was happening in Medina. So he tried, or at least that kept him kind of, let's say, away from the situation until it came to him. And he says that one of the reasons he stays in Medina is because he doesn't want to get involved in what's happening. And most of the revolts were taking place in Sham, in Iraq, and in Persia. So you were looking at Iran and things like this. As you remember, we talked about Abu Hanifa time when the Abbasid were coming in. They were already in Persia. They were coming into Iraq when they jailed Abu Hanifa, trying to get him to rubber stamp some of the decisions made by the Bani Umayyah. So all of this is happening while Imam Malik is in Medina. Now, what really gets Imam Malik going is, I hope you guys remember I said one of the teachers of Abu Hanifa was Abdullah ibn Hasan al-Muthanna. This was, if you remember, his sons had revolted also in Kufa and also in Medina. Remember, I had mentioned that in the last session regarding Abu Hanifa. And so this also was very close to Imam Malik. And now the revolt that happened, this was by Muhammad, also known as Nafs al-Zakiyya. Now, Nafs al-Zakiyya, who's known as Muhammad ibn Hasan, but his nickname was Nafs al-Zakiyya. He starts the revolt in Medina against the Umayyad in Medina. Now, in one of the khutbah, in Jum'ah khutbah, he gets up and he gives a khutbah, and that khutbah gets the people of Medina kind of routed up. They want to support him. They know that some of the things the Bani Umayyah have been doing, and they know that Muhammad Nafs al-Zakiyya is from he's from Ahlul Bayt. They like him, but they don't know what to do because, again, the issue was that they had given bay'ah to al-Mansur, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. And by the way, it seems like this was common. Even the Khawarij, they used to get up and sometimes they would give a khutbah. And when I mentioned the revolt of the Khawarij, one of the Khawarij actually stood up and he gave a khutbah, and people didn't really, they lost the support of the people, especially because of their tendencies to make takfir on people so much. And so they would say things like, anybody that drinks is a kafir, anybody who misses salah is kafir, things like this. So they had already lost. But then Nafs al-Zakiyya, he gets up and gives a khutbah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that in these times, it was very common to hear khutbahs that could create very difficult times, or if not, things would become very sensitive and serious very quickly in Medina and these areas in general. That also shows that the Muslims were very much involved in what's happening. They are listening to the khutbahs. Khutbahs were not some a talk given that has nothing to do with anything. They're just given just because it's kind of like it's a fard. Let me just talk about any issue so that I can take the time and finish that time. So whatever happens, happens. People come, give a khutbah, go to sleep. If not, take a break and then go to work. This was not the reason. I mean, these khutab were very political. These khutab were very inspiring. These khutab, I mean, you're talking about somebody like Nafsu Zakiyah standing up, giving a khutbah and literally asking the people to revolt against the Khalifa of the time. So you can imagine what was happening. And this is Medina, of course. So people asked him, but we have already given bay'ah to Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. What do we have to do now? What do we say? What do you have to say about this? So he gives his opinion, and his opinion is the one who is forced. This is now, of course, he makes qiyas from this hadith. The one who is forced into marriage, and there is no, remember when we talked about this issue that, there is no marriage with force. You cannot make somebody marry somebody with force. So, and this is, obviously there's no divorce either if there's no marriage. By default, it's an automatic divorce. So he said, because of this, we are not held to that pledge because we were forced into it. Now, there's another thing also, is that he is a muhaddis. Keep something in mind, and this is, by the way, it is muwatta here. I kept it here, and we have the Arabic one over there, Imam Malik is muwatta. So he has this hadith mentioned in the book. And he is a muhaddis, and he knows the sanad of it, he knows the matan of it, he knows all of the categorizations of it, all of it in details. I mean, you're talking about somebody who's both a faqih and a muhaddis. So they tried to silence him first from not teaching this hadith. This was one of the biggest things. They told him to stop, not even mention, don't mention this hadith, because this was being mentioned in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, and there was an incident where Sulaiman, he came in yelling and screaming in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, saying, this and that. And so he would say to him, don't you know the ayah that do not raise your voices, sort of in front of the Prophet ﷺ. And then he said, whatever nonsense that you have to say, you say it outside. So he was Imam Malik was, tough when he came to how he dealt with the hukam in general. So anyway, he left, he would tell him, if you're going to come and yell, because at that time, sometimes 30 to 40 halaqat would be going on in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, and his was one of the top ones. And he would actually sit in a place where Rasul ﷺ used to sit, and then later on Umar ibn Khattab used to sit and give the khutbah. So Imam Malik he had this aura about him, and this is why whatever he goes through, it's so, I think it really got to the people of Medina because of who Imam Malik is. Imam Malik, in the beginning, although he comes from, very, medium, let's say, family, later on he became pretty wealthy. But he used to say that, when it comes to his wealth was always in his hand, not his heart. The dunya never went into his heart. And this was one of the things you can see from him, that he used to, carry even a soft handkerchief. And when he used to, he would put it in front of him, and then he would go to sajda. And they would ask him, how come you do this? And he would say that he doesn't, it's not about the appearance, for instance, it's about the sincerity to Allah Azza wa Jal, because he didn't want people to think that he would stay in sajda for so long, and people would look at his, forehead and say, look, mashallah, this person is so and so. So he would put a soft handkerchief so that people would not even know that he stays in sajda for so long, or is ibadah. So this is the kind of sincere people that you're talking about. Even when he put together Muwatta, as we know, that at the time that he's putting together this Muwatta, there were 100 other scholars that started putting together al-Muwatta. Just like him, they started saying that we will also do, and then subhanAllah, they would come and ask him, what do you say, what do you have to say about those scholars who are doing this? He said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will protect and preserve the one that's done for him. Until today, subhanAllah, we have no idea about the other 99 Muwattas, but for sure we have this Muwatta. Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserves knowledge, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects the people of knowledge and protects the people who work for his deen. May Allah make us from them. And we also see that Imam Malik, before I go to his, because I was trying to right away go to his mihna, his trial, but just few things about him also, that, he is one of those few people who took also knowledge from women. One of them, I think her name was, if I'm not mistaken here, I think Amra, radiallahu anha. She was, she's mentioned, her hadith is actually mentioned in 6 books of the hadith, the 6 sita that we call it. We have them in those 6. And then she's also a student of Aisha radiallahu anha, and also the student of Salama radiallahu anha. And so when Imam al-Zuhri and Abu Bakr at the time, those two, when they were trying to put their book together, they were told to actually, Abdullah ibn or Umar ibn Abdul Aziz used to tell them to go to make sure to visit them in order to make sure that they have the hadith from them. So she is one of his, she is known as one of his teachers, and now also his own daughter Fatima, who memorized the Muwatta, and she was not only did she memorize the Muwatta, she also used to teach, and she used to stand by the door and hear the students give the Muwatta after they memorize it, and if they made any mistakes, she used to hit on the door saying, you made a mistake, like this. And so people used to come and get their corrections for the book. So this was one of the amazing things about Imam and his daughter, to the point that he used to say that, be like my daughter and not like my son, because he had 3 sons and 1 daughter, and he was very fond of his daughter, and his son, he used to complain that he got too involved in playing around rather than studying. So now Imam Malik, remember we were saying that he said, do not give this opinion, do not speak about this hadith, don't say this hadith, and he would say, what are you talking about, not to say this hadith? And as also we heard the Sheikh before me saying that if you have an evidence, bring that evidence, and then we weigh the evidences. Now Imam Malik, by saying that statement, is now supporting this revolution in a very subtle way. Remember I said, for the longest time, Imam Malik was he was trying not to get involved in any of these things. But at this point, it was happening in Medina, it almost left him no choice. But not only that, when he came to the hadith, he had no choice but to make sure that people know this is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And so now people know his position very clearly, and he makes it very clear to his students also that this is his position. And that position is that, if there is no force, no contract by force, that also goes to no contract by force, meaning no bay'ah by force, even to the Khalifa. Basically, he's supporting Nafs al-Zakiyah. Now, what Jafar ibn Sulaiman he does is that he has Imam Malik dragged into the streets of Medina, and then he beats him until his shoulders were pulled out. Some of the ulama, they said this is one of the reasons why he had their opinion of leaving his hands down. But of course, this is one of the things that's mentioned. That there's many, because Imam Malik in his own book mentions the hadith. Again, I don't want to go into the difference of opinion because it's a long difference of opinion, and we will go back and forth on this. But it's very interesting to hear, though, that what the opinions were, because although he himself mentions the hadith in his book, that all of the Anbiya used to put their hands on the chest, and he mentions it in Muwatta. But then he mentioned it as a sunnah, so the people know what the sunnah is. And then he goes back and forth and all that on what the real opinions of Imam Malik. But then he was beaten on the streets, he was whipped on the streets, he was paraded around, tied to animal. Now you're talking about Imam Malik here. Look, imagine like a serious alim that and then all of a sudden you see him in a situation you never thought possible. They shaved his beard. Imagine that. They actually shaved his beard. Imam Malik, he was very blonde. He had very good looking man. They said very tall, long. His beard would fill up his chest.
And then to the point that I think it was Rabi Rahi that used to say that when his servant used to come and say, look who's standing out there, and she would come out and look and say, it's your blind student standing outside. That's what she used to say when he was young. So from that time on, and then he did have, his mother really had created this thing in him that he was very well dressed. Even from the beginning, she would put nice aim on his head, nice clothes on him, and then she would send him to the madrasa, and then she would go and she would say, learn from Rabi al-Ra'i, learn from his manners before you learn from his knowledge, and these kind of things that, subhanallah, that made Imam Malik very, interesting person. Like his fruits, even he had a fond for bananas, and he used to say, he would open them up and he would say, why did he like to eat bananas? He would say, because no man has touched it. And then when he would sit when he's teaching, he had to have, good smelling everywhere, and he would wear completely white. Some even said that he got so well off in his life that he would wear one top and not wear it again. That's how well off he was. Imagine that. Even just wearing it once, and then, and then the way he would teach, and that nobody can tell him, can you repeat it again? Nobody dared to say that. So you can say that he had this aura about him, this ru'b about him. And so very, they knew this is Imam Malik. So imagine now you see him, this Imam Malik, all of a sudden on the streets, tied to animals, being dragged on the streets, being shaved. They shaved him. Imagine this man, he's 58 years old when they're doing this to him. His shoulders both, pulled out from his sockets, beaten. And as the sheikhs mentioned, they've even blackened his face. And so, because he was so proud of what he was going through, he told them, he said, just maybe that people might not know who they're doing this to. So he would say that I am Malik, and I say this. I am Imam Malik, and I am and this is my stand. So you can just imagine, if you are going through a tough time, you're going through a situation, these type of stories, when you hear about ulama like this, it gives you such strength to say that, subhanallah, this is the type of people you need, and this is where you gain your strength from. And this is why, when we think about the ulama today, brothers and sisters, when we look at the ulama, in reality, we are looking for strength. You're looking for hope. You're looking for really somebody to come to the ummah and say, listen, Allah Azza wa Jal will not only take care of us, but inshallah will use us to bring back this deen. Will use us to bring back the places that are under the occupation, that will bring back the ummah where Imam Shafi'i is from, Gaza. You're looking for ulama to give you that hope, to speak like that, to suffer if you have to, go through pain, suffering, sometimes even being humiliated for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. And hence, when they came to Imam Malik and they would tell Imam Malik that, what do you have to say about what you went through? He would say, a man that has not been harmed for the sake of Allah, there is no good in him. Imagine, he said, a man who has not been harmed for the sake of Allah, then there is no good in him. And he would say, Alhamdulillah, what have we gone through? Because Abu Hanifa had gone through what he was going through at the time of Malik, and then you look at what Nafs al-Zakiyah went through. At the end, they killed him. That was a revolt that failed, but he saw that revolt, and he saw the revolt of the whole family of the family of Hassan radiallahu anhu. The whole family revolted, every single one of them. And talk about justice and revolting in the Muslim Ummah, it's something else. These people never rested, and when it came to standing up for justice, they did not rest. I mean, the whole Bani Umayyah was like this, and of course, the Abbasids, they were like this. And then later on, even when you actually read about the wars that took place between the Abbasid or the Bani Umayyah and even the Turks, you see how, subhanallah, what kind of fighting that took place at the end for even Turks to come under Islam.
And also he was imprisoned for some time. Now, of course, Imam Malik, I mean, you're not talking to a stupid man. The people in Medina, the politicians, they got worried to what's happening to him when all of this is happening. And of course, Jafar al-Mansur, he hears what's happening. He comes to Medina, and he says, if you wish, we will punish him, Sulaiman, and all of this. They said Imam Malik was standing. Listen to what Abu Jafar had said. He listened to him. He didn't say a word back to him, because he came all the way from Baghdad to apologize. He just listens to him, turns around, and goes to the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ and starts teaching again. Yani he was very clear. He knew that nothing. All this nonsense, he's not going to hear it from him. Because you're talking about somebody, like at one time, Mahdi, which was another governor, when Imam Malik went to see him once, and he had asked for water, and the man gave him water in a silver cup. So he looked at just the cup, and he got up and left. And Mahdi, he went after him saying, Imam Malik, what's the issue here? What's the issue? What's the issue? He told them, you asked for water, you give me water in a haram cup. And this is gold and silver. And then he went and he actually bought him water in actual cup, and he came back home, Imam Mahdi, he came back home and he told all of the cups of silver and gold, you better get rid of it. Meaning that he did have influence. Actually, all of his, some of the sons of many of the Khulafa grew up and learned under Imam Malik in Medina. So many of them had a certain type of respect for Imam Malik. He had this heba that no matter what Imam Malik, they would see that one time he said that he was speaking, one of the governors of Medina, I think it was Mahdi, he was speaking, and the ulama were sitting in front. Imam Malik came and he just sat in the back. And when he saw him in the back, he just got up and said, Sheikh, please, you come and you sit in the front. But this is the kind of respect he had in Medina. And now for him to go through what he went through, you can imagine, subhanallah. So, and then of course, rahmatullah alayhi, he passes away at the age of, I think, 86, that was mentioned, rahmatullahi alayhi. Again, as I mentioned, one of the things, this statement really, brothers, that he made, really, at least it took my breath away when someone says, if people of knowledge, a person who has not been harmed for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, there is no good in him. This is something that we have to really look into and realize in our own lives. What are we willing to give for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal? To the point that what are we even doing that somebody would even consider harming, that you're doing for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal? The last thing here, actually I'll finish it with this. There are some amazing things to mention, especially about the teachers of Imam Malik. I think Sheikh Qasim also mentioned them. But one of the things is that all of them were mawlas. All of them were servants. This is very interesting. From Nafi', who was the mawla of Abdullah ibn Umar. It's very interesting, brothers, that, brothers and sisters, that all of the teachers that he has, they were all servants of the Sahaba. Although they were serving the Sahaba, and you can imagine the relationship between the Sahaba and their servants, that their servants became teachers, amazing teachers, fuqaha, ulama, muhaddithin, mufassirin, and they became teachers, that they were teaching now people of Medina, and they're considered the tabi'in, they're considered the salaf. If you look at Ata ibn Abi Rabah, you look at, and actually all of them, even Ibn Hurmuz, I think he is from Abdullah ibn Abbas. I think he's a servant. But all of them, all of the teachers that he had, they were all servants of some of the Sahaba who were known as the Ibadillah. The Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Abdullah ibn Umar, and Abdullah ibn Zubair. Subhanallah. And the last thing, as I said, whatever he said, whatever was done for Allah will remain.
And this was, as I said, when others tried to, because when he put together the Muwatta, the Khalifa of the time came and said that let's make this the official book of the Khilafah, basically, that all of the Qadis would basically take that and they will rule from there. And they were going to hang it in the Haram. And so he rejected it and he said, no, it is, he didn't accept it. And he said that Sahaba had different opinion. How is it that you're going to force the people to accept this book? And some of the ulama, they mentioned that is an amazing decision, because imagine if a Khalifa comes later on, and let's say he didn't like Imam Malik. He could have taken the book and said, burn the book of Imam Malik. And burning the book of Imam Malik would mean fitna, and Allah knows what kind of fitna and what kind of mischief would have started because of that. And not only that, maybe his book would not have remained, because he thought that, who will not want his book to be put as a show in the Haram. So again, he said, although others tried to put together what he put together, and even name it al-Muwatta kind of thing, but subhanAllah, at the end he says, whatever was done for Allah will remain. And I will end at that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us steadfast, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to use us for His sake, and give us ulama like Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i and others, inshallah, that we will continue on also discussing here at this platform. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.